Live from Radio Row, SportsGrid's coverage of Super Bowl 59 continues. Joe Lisi alongside NFL legend Brad Hopkins from the Houston Oilers. Brad, talk to me about the atmosphere here in New Orleans. Just a great city, and more importantly, the big game on Sunday.
Yeah, New Orleans is not new to hosting a Super Bowl, hosting the grandest competitions that there are to offer. So I think that this city is very well equipped, very well built for handling the entourage of the NFL's greats to converge in one city to basically celebrate two teams that are very deserving of being in this situation, both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Now, the matchup is intriguing, right? We have the three-peat with Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid looking for history, and potentially the most dominant team offensively and maybe even defensively that I feel maybe is going under the radar. We know about the success of Philadelphia, but they've won 15 of the last 16 games, have one of the most dynamic, if not the most dynamic rushing attack with Jalen Hurts and, more importantly, Saquon Barkley, and that defense, right, to go up against Pat Mahomes. This is a different team that played a couple of seasons ago. Do you have a prediction or feel how this game might play out?
Well, this is probably one of the more intriguing matchups given the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs throughout the regular season haven't looked like a team that would actually be playing in New Orleans, right? There have been a time or two where either the Broncos or the Raiders or even the Panthers themselves looked like they should have handed them a defeat this year. But somehow they found a way to win. I think they have the most one-point wins, 17 straight being in that situation. But here are the Philadelphia Eagles that play a stout defense, and like you mentioned earlier, Saquon Barkley leading the rushing attack that is very physical. They're big on both sides in Philadelphia. But one thing the Chiefs do also very well is stop the run.
Right.
Between Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, obviously Drew Tranquill, all these guys can actually flat out get after it, which is going to make it a super interesting contest. Both of these teams know what's on the line. Saquon Barkley's trying to beat Terrell Davis's record for postseason yardage. And, of course, Patrick Mahomes and company are trying to win the Super Bowl for the third straight year, which has never been done, Joe.
Absolutely. And you were on a great team as well, right? The late Steve McNair and Eddie George and the potential a yard away if right?
Yeah.
If Mike Jones if Mike Jones doesn't make that tackle on the goal line, we might be saying, Super Bowl champion back in the day in regards with the Houston team. Talk to me about that, just preparation-wise, right? Because you played in the big game. Is there something that obviously you have to kick up a notch? You have the extra week off. Is there something from just an emotional or mentality perspective that is a little bit different maybe than the regular season?
No, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're not trying to deviate from the things that got you to that stage in the first place. The NFL is about consistency. And while you might be doing too much to try and, make yourself less predictable, by and large, doing the things that got you there in the first place are what you try and hone in on. And for us, we didn't have the extra week. There was no Pro Bowl before the AFC and NFC championship games and then the Super Bowl. We went the next week to Atlanta and played in the game. So for us, we really had to have our mindset that we were actually going to be playing in Atlanta and do some of the things that would prepare us to play whatever team we were going to play there, because we did have a shorter window than the one they have now.
Interesting. The way I see it, too, and we'll get into exactly what you're doing currently, but just Saquon Barkley, when you look at the cherry on top potentially, right, when you just look at that, unbelievable in terms of, would you say he's potentially one of the best ever?
Well, I think that in this situation he is. Saquon Barkley's talents haven't increased from when he was a Giant. He's still the same prolific back that he was when he was in New York, but the compliments around him, particularly that offensive line he's running behind, that's what really makes the difference. A great running back will take full advantage of the opportunities that an offensive line will present to him. Derrick Henry is experiencing the same kind of season in Baltimore, where he rushed for over 2,000 yards himself because of the difference in the unit around him. These are two very talented backs. They're really good at what they do, but when you surround them with the right pieces, they're magnificent.
I know you're involved in a great company as it relates to men's health as well, because as athletes and even just, regular, the average male, right, throughout the year, I'm 53 years old, in terms of testosterone levels, HGH levels, they diminish over time. Talk to me about what you're currently involved in as it relates to all of that and just peak performance.
Yeah, low T is helping with your TRT. That's basically your testosterone and the therapies that come along with being able to adjust some of those things that naturally decline in our bodies, right? if you find yourself moody, if you find yourself lethargic, you're just not focused like you would be normally. Sure, age is part of that situation, but there are things that you can do, getting into a process, a protocol that can help you adjust those. Getting your numbers tested, first of all, to find where you are, getting a baseline and understanding exactly where the problem areas are, and then implementing a plan that can help you get those levels where they need to be, so that way you can lead a healthy, happy lifestyle.
Yeah, interesting. And not just in terms of athletes for peak performance, right, but for the average person to just maybe in terms of longevity, right, living into your 80s and 90s, that's a huge part of it as well.
Yeah, peak performance in all levels.
Absolutely. Is there a website or where they can access it? Because Chris Johnson's involved as well.
Absolutely.
2,000-yard rush.
There are a lot of athletes that are actually involved because they, first off, either experience it personally, the things that go on with them. But, obviously, if you Google OT, those centers are probably in an area near you, and you can go in and find a professional that can actually help you get where you need to be.
And it's happening more and more because I live in New Jersey and I'm seeing them across the nation, where men could go in and get everything checked out. First it was prostate, right, in terms of prostate
always get
cancer,
your screenings,
right? And then now it's all the blood levels, the lipids, the cholesterol, and then you take it a step further with the testosterone levels.
Absolutely.
As well.
And screening is a part of everything. When you're talking about testosterone, when you're talking about prostate, those things, because men's health nowadays is something that we're not ashamed to talk about.
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
It's health, right? And
you have to be able to have a dialogue, an open dialogue, and be honest with yourself about how you feel. And then that way you can find out where these problem areas are and then get to them before they actually become too much of a problem.
I'm a college guy, and I told you, so I have to ask you. And I know back in the day your team was down. You said big brother to Dana Howe, potentially Lou Tepper, and that
my guy.
That linebacker core, Simeon Rice, Kevin Hardy, Dana Howard, right? The list goes on in terms of the great talent in terms of Champaign back in the day. But now Brett Bielema, right? All of a sudden the success that they have had overall, he was on the hot seat, I thought, entering this season, right? Because of the performance. We saw Lovey come in there. They got to a certain level, but Brett now has brought it over the hump, per se, right? A 9-win season last year. They're in a bowl type of situation. Your thoughts about the program moving forward?
Well, first of all, Brett Bielema is a Big Tenner by birth.
Yeah.
He was a former Iowa Hawkeye that I used to put hands on as a defensive lineman, right? So he understands the level of competition that it takes to play at that level. We always talk about the SEC and some of these other bigger conferences, but when you look at, by and large, the teams that flat out get after it from August all the way until December, the Big Ten is right up there with the best of them. And I think that Brett Bielema has that program right where they need to be to make those elevations. Now, they got to beat some of the big dogs. They got to beat the Ohio States consistently, the Michigans consistently. Penn State, James Franklin's got a tremendous program up there. And as long as he continues to make strides and gets better and win the recruiting battle, they should be doing just fine.
They went toe-to-toe. Luke Altmaier and that crew, I mean, they were 18.5-point underdogs. They lose the game by 14, 21-7. But I tell you, when you can run the football, you're in every game. Great insight from Brad Hopkins. We'll be back after this.